All right, so I've been dealing with my usual amount of apartment related problems this morning, and I walked over to the leasing office and there was no one there when it clearly says that someone should be there. But with that said, yesterday I was browsing the internet for ideas for videos to make on the weekend, and this one came up because it directly related to what I do, tech workers that are broke. Because as the tech industry has grown, in popularity, salaries shrank because there became a saturation of ordinary people who thought they could just get a simple certification and then jump right into a high paying career. That doesn't happen. Without the 3 to 5 years of experience for an entry level help desk style job, you are never going to advance in this field. And the reason for that is simple. There's plenty of old people working in tech like myself. If you're 20 something, you just got out of school, even if you have a STEM degree, you're not going to be able to make up the necessary experience on your resume. And most companies don't want to pay you anything anyway. And the worst part is, even if they let you in, they don't want to offer you any training, any mentoring, nothing. They want you to be fully prepared to take on a senior level job straight out of college. And that's just not going to happen, so it's unrealistic. That means that tech jobs are no longer a viable source of income or a sound financial decision going forward. And it hasn't been good in over 10 years. The last time that I saw that tech salaries were good was 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, the people that worked in my position made the exact same amount. And with that said, let's get into our first monologue here. Working in tech used to mean you made it. Now it just means you're broke in dark mode. You're not living the dream. You're surviving inside Microsoft Teams, praying your internet doesn't cut out during a panic attack. And the craziest part, they didn't automate your job to make life easier. They automated it so they could pay you less while you cry into your gaming keyboard. Yes, that's the reality of life. It's like every Friday that I get paid, there's nothing left. There's nothing left to put into savings. There's nothing left to enjoy. There's nothing left in order to be able to do anything. You're just stuck in a vicious cycle of going to a job that will never pay you enough. The same way that I felt while I worked at Kroger's and Walmart is the way that I feel now. It's not buying me more. In fact, it's buying me less. I have to spend all my weekends working, and the thought of ever taking a vacation is insane. Like, I had to take 2 weeks off or 2 days off last week, and they made it seem like I was never going to come back. And I was just like, um, hey, if you're going to hire incompetent people to work here, that's your problem. In fact, I was talking to one of my coworkers the other day, and he's like, what can you possibly expect from a Gen Z worker who can pick their nose and scratch their butt simultaneously, but that's the extreme version of that person doing the best they can in a world in which they don't fit in any capacity. And it's unfortunate because these people still need money. There's just no money to be made in this particular field anymore. And with that said, let's get into talking point number one. Tech was sold like a lottery ticket to the middle class, but most tech workers today feel like retail workers with fancier problems. You're not living the dream. You're debugging your paycheck while eating microwave burritos. Instead of please clock out, it says please resolve this ticket. Resolve this ticket before you mentally collapse. That's actually something that comes up so often. In fact, I just had this super hot I don't know what to call her. She's 50 years old and she told me straight up that's how old she was. She still likes going out to the bars. And I was coming down a hallway and I could see a very, very fine rear end about 20 feet out in front of me. And I was like, you know what? No one in this building has that kind of rear. And like shaking it from side to side. And I was like, those are some dangerous curves up ahead. And I just didn't know who it was. Well, as I got to the end of the hallway and she made a turn past my office, she looked in the glass and she saw me standing behind her, and she just ran over to give me a big hug. And I was like, oh, this is unnatural. So I'm like, come inside my office. And she came in, she sat down, and we talked about her tech problems. And I asked her why she just didn't call the department. Why she just didn't call them? Why don't you call the people that are supposed to help you? And she's just like, I don't like any of those people. And I thought to myself, wow, every end user doesn't like the nerds that work in that group. But she asked me to help her. I told her I didn't have time, and she said she'd come back on Monday morning. But I don't know why I went off on that tangent, other than resolving a ticket. And that's really what it came down to. She was having problems with her security software. She needed help. She didn't know what to do. But that's what you have to do. My day is probably 50% shoulder taps and 50% trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. Like at no given point during my day do I have a normal job. It's this or that, or crawl underneath here, or fix that, or come over here, or hey, there's heating problems on this side of the building. It is a strange field to be in. Somehow the tech field de-evolved into janitor. It feels like just overnight. In fact, there are some positions where they hire the job as a percentage janitor who knows about computers, and you're like, how do you hire people for that position? Who takes that job? Imagine a garbage man that also has to do plumbing when he gets out of his truck. You're driving down the street picking up dumpsters and someone rushes out. It's like, hey, I have a plumbing issue. And he's got to pull over and help you unclog your toilet. That's how technology slowly de-evolved into what it is today. Talking point number two. Every raise you get, rent goes up faster, groceries go up faster, health insurance eats the rest. In 2015, 100K was made it money. In 2025, it's barely surviving in a city with plumbing. I have to agree. 20 years ago, when I looked at the guys that made what I currently make, they were living it up. You're talking about a huge truck, a boat, a house, a cabin, vacations. It was real money back then. But slowly, they decided that they weren't going to raise the salaries. And you're kind of like wondering, well, I'm doing more work today than I was back then, but I'm getting paid less. And that's every industry that you go into. In fact, yesterday I was reading an article about a girl who took a job as a marketing director inside of a small law firm. And the sadistic son of a gun that hired her treated her worse than anything. Can you imagine if your boss came up to you and told you to look for staples in the carpet and pull them out and throw them away while simultaneously asking you to go to Circle K to get him a candy bar? I could not, I just don't understand small business owners who want to treat their employees like they're butlers or their maids while hiring them under the pretense of marketing director. But that's the world we live in. It's an entirely bait and switch world that has come about. And as workers, we don't have a choice but to take the job that calls us back. All right, talking point number three. Why pay you when they can pay someone overseas a quarter of your rate or pay AI nothing at all? Companies aren't loyal to talent, they're loyal to cheapness. Learning to code doesn't make you irreplaceable, it just makes your replacement cheaper and faster. This is something that I learned while I was working for Insight Corporation. I was sitting in a call center and we had in person people, right? We had people sitting in the cubicles, and then we had 25 to 30% of our group that worked in other countries. And when you would ask these people about how much they made, they would tell you that they were making $5, $6 an hour comparatively. And in fact, I remember talking to a guy that worked out of Mexico City, and even though it was a completely remote job, they forced him to come into an office every single day that was 2 hours away from his home. So he had to take a train for 2 hours to commute into work, sit down in an office, and then commute 2 hours back home. And I thought to myself, that's the cruelty of people in the third world countries doing these tech jobs. Sure, they can do them, but they're not going to be compensated in any way. You're talking about people with a very high level of education, but that live in India and that are working in a call center, reading a script, or troubleshooting hardware issues. They don't pay those people anything. But again, just like with America's short-sightedness, it's in a sense the same problem that we have with manufacturing jobs in America. No one's going to do that job for $7.25. But if you've got a guy in China who's willing to take 30 cents an hour to do that same job, what do you think a corporation's going to choose? They don't have their customers' best interest in mind. All they're interested in is record profits. Same thing can be said about Walmart. Almost everything inside of a Walmart is made in China or somewhere else. In fact, yesterday I was watching a video that was talking about how almost all sneakers in the world are made in either Vietnam or Indonesia because it's just cheaper to make them there. If you have an American worker, he's going to want a decent salary, a pension. He's going to want stuff. And unfortunately, when people want stuff, that means that they have to put record profits before the stuff that you want. So, um, so they have to take into consideration where they're going to put their manufacturing facilities. And we all know that's not here because they don't want to pay people real amounts of money. In fact, I've been warning you guys about this for years now, is that these corporations want to use every loophole they can to pay you less. Every chance they get, they're looking for a way to offer you less benefits, less paid time off, and less salary. That's their end goal with every single person that they hire in this country. They don't want anyone making money other than the people that they choose, the executives, the people that work in the headquarters, the people that matter, the people that make money are the people that are rewarded with money. The people like myself who just keep the lights on, we're not people like them. We're different. We're people that they don't see as humans. It's very easy to exploit a resource if you don't see it as a flesh and blood human being. And we as poor people are not like them, and we will never be seen like them. Think of rich people, when they look at their workers, they see them as cockroaches, and they want to squish every single one of them and poison their environment so that they know that they're working in a toxic environment all of the time because they don't like us. Final talking point. Tech companies be like, we care about mental health while assigning you 200 tickets, 6 meetings a day, and expecting you to be passionate for free. You don't need a mindfulness app. You need a livable wage and less existential dread. Existential dread. That perfectly describes my job right there. In fact, I was talking to one of the guys that works in that group of the department, and he's like, "Yeah, 200 a day is what they're aiming for." And I just look at him like, how are five guys supposed to handle 50,000 requests a year? Can you imagine that? That would be like you confronting an army of orcs every single day and never getting tired. Because if there's one thing about this type of work is it's mindless, it's repetitive, and it's a real kick in the nuts every time you get the weekly health newsletter that gives you ideas on how to have better mental health, how to show up at work with a more positive attitude, how to engage with work rather than disengage with work, and uh, and other ideas, cooking recipes for soups to help lower your stress. I mean, the that weekly letter is a I can't even explain to you how badly it makes me feel for them to understand that their workers are financially stressed, emotionally stressed, spiritually stressed, and at the end of the day, when they leave Evil Corp, their hearts are shattered. Every time you unplug from the corporation at 5 o'clock, you go home and you are destroyed mentally. And you know that your stomach kind of hurts a little bit when you think about being right back there at 8 a.m. the next day, not knowing, fully well not knowing if tomorrow's your last day. Because I handle a lot of the termination paperwork, and because I have to look at all these people. And some days I look at the name and I think to myself, I just talked to that person last week. And I had a situation like that on Wednesday of this week where there's a woman that I've talked to for years. She's a VP of something high up, really high up. And I've never met her. But if you've ever met alpha level women, they are extremely aggressive. They have an aggressive nature about them. Their business sense makes them incredibly uh, unpredictable and very cutthroat. So I had never met her, but she fired one of my work friends last week, and it was very uncomfortable to meet her for the first time because I was still upset that they just let her go. I don't know what she did. I don't know why, what performance metrics they're using to get rid of people, whether it's you're refusing to return to office because a lot of people have blatantly said that they're not going to come into the office because they live in other states. And that, to me, makes me uncomfortable when you have to meet the person that did that to someone that is going to struggle very badly. And there's a chance that they may lose everything that they own because there isn't going to be a job that pays that much money out there. Because you and I both know the job market has been crap for years. Finding a halfway decent paying paycheck right now is nearly impossible. In fact, all the jobs that one of my friends that works in career services has sent me in the past 6 months have all been half of what I currently make. How am I supposed to live off a job that pays half of what I currently make? It's just not possible. And these are the kinds of things that weigh heavily on all workers' heads every single day, is that there just isn't the opportunities out there that we need. If you're creating 250,000 retail jobs every month and no real jobs, then what are you really creating? I mean, you could technically say you created a job when you have an opening for a job for 1 hour a week. That's a job that you created, or even 15 hours a week. They don't tell you if they could put like a health level, if they could say, a certain amount of jobs are paying over $100,000 a year. If they created 250,000 new jobs that all paid over $100,000 a year for entry level workers fresh out of college, I would say that's a healthy economy. But when you can create 1 million jobs that all pay 725, which is the federal minimum wage, that's not a healthy economy. Nobody's thriving in an economy where almost all new jobs that you look at on Indeed are all minimum wage or require a master's degree with 5 years of experience for $16 an hour. That may sound far fetched, but it's out there. It's out there right now on the job boards, waiting for someone to drop down there onto their knees and be desperate enough to go into a job interview where they're going to look at you in the face and think, we're thinking salary of $25,000 a year for you being on call 24/7, working 7 days a week, coming in to cover shifts, and be fully responsible for this business. I don't know what these people are smoking or what they're thinking, but there are people who think like that. That it is their obligation to make certain that they enrich themselves by the true exploitation of the proletariat in every conceivable way. That there's no way for you to escape and say, you know what, this is a crap job. I am not going to take this crap job. But they'll always find someone desperate enough to get on their hands and knees and take that job because they have to, not because they want to.